Michael Porter Jr. is arguably one of the biggest unknowns of this recent NBA draft. He was a top recruit coming out of high school and college, but then unfortunately suffered injuries that caused him to miss nearly all of his college career and the start of his NBA rookie season. What's going on, everybody? My name is Brian, and for those new to the channel, I'm a doctor who's also a huge sports fan, and it's my goal on this channel to help combine those two interests and explain sports injuries in a way that's easier for the common fan to understand and learn from. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at what exactly was going on with Michael Porter Jr.'s back injury, specifically talking about disc herniations. Reportedly during the last 2 years of high school, he was dealing with a lot of symptoms stemming from problems in his back. He was having kind of just pain in his legs and his hips, and ultimately described this sensation of his legs just feeling totally dead. He was able to start his freshman season at Missouri, but then quickly had to sit out the rest of the year after undergoing surgery on his back. He came back to play a little bit at the end of the season, but wasn't that effective, and then had to undergo another back surgery before the NBA draft. Let's take a look at our spine anatomy and talk about what's going on in a herniated disc and why it would be causing pain and symptoms. So here we have our lumbar spine and the sacrum. So this is our tailbone down here, just to give you some context. We have 5 different lumbar vertebrae with the yellow spinal cord running in between it, all the way down to then the sacrum, which is kind of the backside of the pelvis. Now, in between each of these vertebral bodies, we have the intervertebral discs, and those are what are involved in disc herniations. If we take one of these discs out and look at it, we can see it's basically just a squishy little cushioning, kind of shock absorbing material. It has a more firm outer layer and then a more jelly-like inner layer that helps provide cushioning and support. Now, what happens with a disc herniation is a variety of mechanical and loading factors can put increased stress on that disc and cause the inner jelly-like material to actually spurt out of it. You've probably heard people use the jelly donut analogy, where the jelly is that inside of the disc, and when it gets squished out, it can kind of leak this jelly out into this space. There's a lot of reasons why people can be susceptible to these disc herniations, but oftentimes it has to do with just the various loading patterns that we see on the spine as athletes go through their playing career. Now, the most common level where we actually see these disc herniations is between the 4th and the 5th lumbar vertebrae. And this is because that's one of the areas of the spine that has the most flexion and extension, along with bending side to side. So it's one of the kind of bending points of the spine that's subjected to a lot of load. The higher up that we go in the spine, the less likely we are to have disc herniations, just because of the way the spine is loaded. So that was one thing unique about Michael Porter Jr.'s injury, is that it was at L3, L4, which is one of the less frequent places that we see these disc herniations. Now you might think, okay, big deal, some disc herniated, why is it that big of a problem? Let's talk about why this matters. So all of these little yellow things coming out of here are our nerve roots. And these exit through the space in the vertebral bodies and travel out to the rest of our body. The roots in the lumbar area of the spine go down and control the muscles in the legs and the pelvis. You can imagine, if we take this off and look at the top here, if I have something squeezing out, it could potentially pinch or push on one of those nerve roots. If you pinch or push on that nerve root, it can affect that nerve to where you then have pain going down the leg or into the bottom or the hips. You can have weakness because those nerves can get affected. And so the reason we worry about disc herniations is because they impinge on this tight little space in here and actually physically push on the nerves themselves. So when Michael was having pain, it was because those nerves were getting pinched, and the corresponding nerve was the corresponding area in his body where he was having pain. Now, what they do in the microdiscectomy procedure is they basically remove the part of the disc that's pinching on the nerve root. You remove the part that's pinching, you alleviate the pressure on the nerve, and ultimately things should get better. And then the whole reason he apparently had to have this second surgery was because initially there were multiple discs that they thought looked like they had herniated but weren't causing symptoms, but then turned out they probably were, and so they went back in and basically did the exact same procedure on a different disc. Now, what are the implications on his career in terms of getting back to play and overall recovery with a procedure like this? So the recovery from one of these microdiscectomies and the disc herniations is typically on the order of months. By far and away, the majority of players return the following season with no real long-term consequences or issues, and even having surgery doesn't necessarily mean that it's a worse outcome than if they were able to manage it without surgery. A lot of studies have looked at comparing non-operative versus operative management of these disc herniations, And people basically do the exact same in the long run, more or less. The key point is just whether or not they're able to make it back. So the players that do make it back into playing seem to have the same performance compared to players who did not have this injury. If they're able to make it back, there shouldn't really be any expected decrease in their playing performance compared to someone who didn't have the injury, which bodes really well for his long-term career. There's a couple other things that are going really well for him. When we look at previous research, if people are having symptoms in their legs as opposed to just in their back, they seem to do better in the long run after these microdiscectomies than people who just had back pain. Now that same research has some things that go against him, so whenever they do the microdiscectomies on these lower levels in the spine, they do better compared to the higher ones, which it sounds like is what he had. So kind of a mixed picture, but overall, it's great that reportedly he's not having any more pain. He feels like he's pretty much back to normal. It's just the Denver Nuggets are doing so well this season that maybe they really don't need to rush him back out onto the court. Hopefully this is the end of it for him. Hopefully there's no more disc herniations in the future. Hopefully they've done a really good job of trying to adjust his mechanics to try to prevent one of these from happening again. And I wish him the best in hopefully returning this year for his rookie season. That's it for this video, everybody. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. I know I learned some stuff doing research for this video as well, so that's really cool. Thanks for the support on these videos. Let me know comments below about what you think or any other questions you have. Leave suggestions for future topics, and I'll just keep putting them on my kind of running list I've got. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye.